that option. With that being said, we'll go ahead and I will introduce our keynote speaker for today. Our keynote speaker is Kate Henderson. She graduated from Iowa State University with a degree in biology. Following graduation, she completed her master's in health management at the University of Iowa and did a fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. She is currently a regional hospital president with Ascension in Austin, Texas, and has a responsibility to 4 Central Texas hospitals. Before she joined Ascension, Kate worked for the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, as well as for the University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics, with responsibility for clinical care operations, as well as support for graduate medical education programs and health-based research. We are very excited to have Kate with us today and her to share her knowledge about the medical community. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. It's really nice to be with you here this morning. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to each of you who has an interest in a career in the range of healthcare professions. It's a very exciting area to work in, and I just hope to share a few experiences with you today and hope to help continue to boost you along your journey, keep you excited about a very exciting way to really focus your life and spend your life contributing to improving the health of others. So thank you for sharing a little bit of feedback on my professional background. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about sort of where I come from. And I think that my beginning begins to tell you a little bit about sort of how I approach life, which I'd like to share. So I grew up on a farm family that's been in my family for over 150 years on the border of the state of Iowa and the state of South Dakota. My entire family went to Iowa State University, so that thread does run very deep. I married a man at Iowa State University. But my time at Iowa State University was very inspirational and very much so helped guide me into figuring out that I wanted to spend my career, my life focused on improving the health and access to healthcare for others. While I was in undergrad, I spent time working in research labs. I really had a hunger for learning about the science of how we improve health and healthcare for others. And then, of course, like most of us, had another job, which was waitressing on the side. One of my most formative experiences that helped me understand where I wanted to contribute in health. First, I thought it might be research because I was really enjoying doing research in some of the animal-based research labs at Iowa State. But it was actually the Iowa State University blood drive that helped me understand sort of where I could contribute my talents and interests. And it was my junior year where I had a chance to lead the volunteer effort to put together a blood drive on campus. And it was actually very inspiring for me to see the number of people it took, the different professions, the different areas of expertise, and the amount of coordination that it took to do something like a blood drive. It was something that I had really underestimated, just hadn't really thought about in the past, and really enjoyed working with a broad group of people in pulling together a health event like that. And I used that experience to begin to talk to my advisors about maybe what would career options like that look like? How could I use my leadership voice, my interest in organizing others and working across multidisciplinary teams, and what would that look like in my professional life? And so I did some shadowing of some other leaders, and that really led me to pursue a master's degree in health and healthcare administration at the University of Iowa. So that's just a little bit about sort of how I started in one direction, thought it was health and the scientific part of health, and it really became more of the business, organization, and delivery part of health in my career. So today I want to share with you, I've got 4 themes of things that I wanted to share with you. And if you have a pen, we'll do the old-fashioned route and a piece of paper. I'd invite you to write down these 4 themes as I talk about them. I want to talk about the theme of self-care. I want to talk about the theme of our relationship with others, the theme of innovation, and the theme of continuous feedback and learning. So before we get those themes, I want to set the stage with a conversation about leadership. As you heard, I graduated from Iowa State. What you didn't hear is I graduated from Iowa State in 1997, which means I've been out of school for 2 decades. And yet there are still voices in my head from 20 years ago that resonate with me every day regarding what I do and how I approach life, and their leadership voices. So I want to share with you the voice of one of my mentors, Tom Filke. He's a pharmacist and led the Department of Pharmacy at the University of Wisconsin Hospital and Clinics. At the time I worked at that organization, he was also my boss and my friend. And one of the first times I went to Tom's office, I noted 2 interesting things. One, there was a map of the world on his wall, and there were these little tiny push pins with red dots scattered all over this map, some in higher concentrations, some scattered in some of the more exotic parts of the world, if you will, but probably well over 1,000 push pins. And next to this really large map of the world was an 8x10 frame with a cross stitch that said on it, the point of leadership is to create more leaders, not more followers. The point of leadership is to create more leaders, not more followers. So after several times meeting with Tom in his office, I decided I had to understand the cross stitch and the map of the world with all the push pins. And I asked him one day, Tom, do these 2 go together? You know, why do you have this? What does this mean to you? And he leaned back in his chair and he said that same phrase out loud. And he said, Kate, one of the most important things I can do is to ensure that long after I'm gone, I have created teams of leaders to continue to lead the progress, in his case, in pharmacy, but in health and healthcare, so we can continue to improve the health and healthcare across the world. And each one of those push pins represents someone that I believe I've helped along their journey learn what their career in health and the health professions will look like. So those are all the individuals I've mentored and I feel responsible for continuing to keep inspired and on their journey. And I think about that every day because that's an opportunity certainly that I have, and it's also an opportunity that each one of you will have. And you might say, well, how is this possible? I'm a student, I'm pursuing pre-health profession. The thing we all need to remember is that leadership is not a position, leadership is an approach. And if each one of us dares to take a leadership approach every day in our words and in our actions, then we all have the opportunity to lead, which is really the opportunity to serve and to serve others. And I'm willing to bet by the nature of each of you on this Zoom today, on a Saturday, that you are inspired to devote your life towards serving others and to arguably solve some really big problems as we think about health and healthcare services in our country and across the world. So big problems. I'm going to say this not to be pessimistic, but rather to highlight to us just how important it is that we do continue to remain focused on health and health improvement in our country and across the world. But just want to share a few statistics with all of you that you may or may not know about just the United States healthcare as it compares to other countries. Most of you have already learned, probably already learned, that the United States spends more money on healthcare than any other country in the world. And yet our health outcomes are lesser than many comparable countries. For example, our maternal mortality rate is higher than any other comparable country. And should you be an African-American woman in our country, you are 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than Caucasian women like myself. The United States has higher rates of medical, medication, and laboratory errors than any other comparable country. And the United States hospital admissions rates for chronic diseases like asthma, COPD, congestive heart failure, and diabetes are much higher than our comparable countries, which means that we're doing a lesser job in taking care of those chronic diseases out of a hospital, and it lends itself to people needing hospital-based care for their health care. Now, again, I don't say that to be a downer, but rather to inspire each of you to join us in this fantastic focus on health and health improvement, because we really do have some big problems to solve. And I think we have a lot of smart people working on it and a lot of smart people on this Zoom today that can help really contribute and make a powerful difference. So let's visit some of our themes First theme is self-care. I was excited to see that we had the student health and wellness presentation. Thank you, ladies, for that presentation. I would encourage all of you to look into those opportunities. I'll tell you one thing that I've learned, and admittedly had to learn the hard way. I approached my career and a lot of my work a little bit like I was a superhero, meaning that I could do anything. I didn't need sleep. I could keep on going, that I somehow had superhero powers. Now, related to COVID-19 this last year, we have seen a lot of advertising about celebrate and recognize your healthcare heroes, and sometimes there's pictures of superheroes. And while I and my whole team appreciate that, because there have been some very heroic things that have happened, as I try to remind my team, there really are no superheroes. We're all people, and we do need to take care of ourselves in order for us to be able to take care of others. So most of you probably can remember the last time you took a flight, although I'm willing to bet that again with our COVID-19 pandemic, perhaps it's been a little bit. But think about the last flight you took, even if it was a year or two ago now, and think about the flight attendants always say, in case of an emergency landing, when the little oxygen masks drop out of the ceiling, first put on your mask and then help others. Because as the saying goes, you can't give what you don't have. So if I'm not able to breathe, I can't help you breathe, is of course what that mask means. But such is true in all parts of our life. If our cup isn't filled, if we're not well, it is impossible for us to care for others well. So really do want to impress upon you that if you haven't already begun to establish good self-care practices, I would encourage you to take advantage of your student health and wellness services on Iowa State's campus or on the campuses that you're on, because one of the most important things we can do is to remember to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. I want to share just a few things that I know that I do in my work, and I try to share with others, members of my team, so that we can really take care of ourselves. Certainly when I think about taking care of my body, I have a regular exercise habit, regular diet habit, and really importantly, regular sleep. I think that I remember coming out of college thinking, oh, I'm really used to only sleeping on 3 or 4 hours a night. Surviving is not thriving. And in order for us to take care of others and to be our best selves, we need to be thriving, not just surviving. And 3 or 4 hours of sleep is certainly just surviving. Also really need to take care of what I'm going to call our spiritual care. And that can mean a whole number of things for folks. For me, what that means is how connected am I with nature? So nature really fills me up, helps me feel like the human being that I am. And so particularly in this last year during a global pandemic, when there have been times where I certainly needed to fill my own personal cup so I could be there to help and support my 4 hospital teams. For me, it's about connecting with nature and making sure that I was going for walks, that I was doing things like kayaking, so that I could really reconnect and fill my own spirit. And then last, but certainly not least, I want to highlight taking care of our own mental health. I think no time like at least any other in my lifetime has there been more focus on mental health, particularly because of the isolation due to the pandemic and the stress of the situation. And I'm hopeful that that will lend itself to more in health and healthcare and really across our professions talking about each other's mental health and how we can work together to improve each other's mental health. Share with you some of my own personal habits. There are great apps you can put on your phone so that no matter where you are, you can do a 5-minute meditation. In fact, right now, I have an app on my phone that regularly when I drive to the grocery store and sit and wait for curbside to put the groceries in the back of my car, I'll put my app on because usually it takes 15 minutes for someone to come out and load my car. And so I use 10 of those minutes to do a meditation using an app in my phone and just help lower my blood pressure and have that moment of quiet for the day. When I'm at work, when you work across 4 hospitals, there's often not a moment of free time, personal space, or quiet. I have, however, found that a lot of people are not in the stairwells, that there's a lot of elevator use. And so when I need to get away and have a moment of personal space, I hit the stairs and I just walk up and down the stairs for as long as it takes for me to sort of recenter myself and find that connection with the quiet. So it's my mind and my body of movement helps me really maintain my own sense of calm, again, so that I'm ready to support others who need my help. So self-care, just really encourage each of you to think about how you're taking care of your mind, body, and spirit in whatever way makes sense for you, but to develop those habits early and also to share with others and ask them how they're doing. The second theme I want to explore with you today is relationship with others. So as I mentioned to you, I was drawn to the field of health and healthcare because I do love the science. And what I've really enjoyed in my career is using my knowledge of science, though certainly my job as being a hospital president involves some more of the business aspects of healthcare. But really what each one of us will do in our health profession is work with people and be in relationship with other people. Maya Angelou has a famous phrase where she said, people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, I don't know if any of you have been watching the news, but the state of Texas, which is where I live in Austin, Texas, is right now in a state of emergency. We, for the last 6 days, have had rolling power outages, or in some cases, have homes without power for 5 days. It is unprecedented weather conditions. Now, for Iowans or Minnesotans or Ohioans, having it be 3 degrees is no big deal, but it's an incredible disastrous situation in Texas when homes that aren't built for those sort of temperatures don't have heat and power. I got home last night after spending 3 days in one of our hospitals, helping our trauma team with some of our patients. And I want to tell you a story about, we understood our medicine very well as a trauma center, but I had a chance to round on a patient last night before I got home where we had actually lost our humanity with her. Let's just say her name was Susan. She was a 28-year-old female. She came in our emergency department with complaints of fever, nausea, and abdominal pain. And as I was talking with her, what the story she told me was one where, because we're a trauma center and we were working mightily to have enough energy, food, oxygen, and water to our trauma center last night, you might imagine that the emergency department, and we were taking traumas in, a young woman who, quote unquote, just had a fever, just had abdominal pain, and just had nausea, didn't get the attention that she needed. Meaning, while we provided her the right medical care, we didn't provide her the right human care. She felt alone. She felt like no one listened to her. She felt like no one cared. She felt like she was lesser than others that had higher medical needs. She even told me that some staff, when she asked what pharmacy she could go to get her outpatient medications, and in our environment right now, most stores are closed. There's a lot closed due to icy conditions or complete loss of utilities. Our staff's response was, I'm not sure, it's a bad night to get sick. Perhaps you'll have to Google it. Now, I'm not proud to share that with you today. That's a complete failure in our part, but I share that to highlight that the importance of understanding the science of how to provide the right care, because we did provide the right medical care. But somewhere in our own stress and our own chaos, we forgot about how she was feeling, her own human fear, and we forgot to take care of her as the human being that she is. I imagine some of that had to do with she was a alternative looking individual. She didn't look to have many resources. And as I heard her own personal story, I imagine that we made some judgments about her own self-report, and we didn't listen to her. And that's really an opportunity all of us have as we think about our goals of serving in health and healthcare, is that we sit and we really listen to other individuals, that we hear their stories, and that we meet them where we are. When I think about the US health outcomes and statistics I just shared with you, particularly the one where I shared with you our maternal outcomes and the divide between Caucasian women and Black women, that is largely related to a failure to understand and listen to people and understand their differences and hear their story. This is a huge opportunity for each one of us to be those leaders in health and healthcare, to meet people where they are, to use what you will soon in all the health professions that you are pursuing, learn how to do, and to be able to make a really big difference in individuals' lives. Another story I want to share with you about relationship with others is one of my mistakes. There's an African proverb that I keep on my desk, And it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. My first job after my Cleveland Clinic fellowship was at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. And there I worked in the Department of Radiation Oncology, which was part of the Comprehensive Cancer Center. There's an older woman there. She was in her 60s. Her name was Lottie. And her job was to manage the very complicated medical records related to the delivery of radiation therapy to cancer patients. Now, at the time, all of you may laugh or find this unbelievable, but at the time, radiation therapy records were too complicated to be in a computer system. There was no such thing as an electronic medical record for radiation therapy. And so there were these large, thick files with these multi, sort of like a brochure, you could unfold it, and that's where medical physicists would chart what the treatment plan was and the radiation dosage. These paper charts were foundational to be able to deliver safe radiation care every day. And Lottie's job was really important, where she had a cart that she pushed through the hospital with these big, thick files, and she had to get them from point A to point B across all these different clinics so that the multidisciplinary care team understood what radiation was being delivered to our patients. So my mistake. I knew that we needed to change around some of the physical layout of the clinic, which was going to involve changing how Lottie's work area and that medical record area looked and worked. And rather than working with Lottie and involving her in how to remodel her medical records area, which I knew she wasn't going to like, and I knew it was going to take a long time to work with her to help move that, I mistakenly, this is painful to say, had myself convinced that if I just came in over the weekend and did it myself, then I would save everybody the trouble of needing to sort of work through that change, that I would just make the change happen and then everything would be up and running just fine on Monday morning. That's exactly what I did. Now, if you might imagine, what did things look like Monday morning in clinic when Lottie, again, think about the importance of her job. Those medical records were necessary to get from point A to point B. And when she realized what I had done alone versus taking the time to do it with her, she fell apart. And not only did she feel completely undervalued, but the file room wasn't set up well because I wasn't a file room clerk. I didn't really know how it should be organized. Nonetheless, we survived the day and the weeks going forward, and I eventually was able to repair my relationship with Lottie. But it was a powerful example, a small but powerful example that I've used for the rest of my career to remind myself that it is always best when something is uncomfortable to step in with compassion, to work through the change with others, because we can go so much further together than going alone. The third thing I want to share with you regarding relationship with others is gratitude. So I grew up where my grandmother always made me write handwritten thank you notes, after birthdays or Christmas, and I always said that that's what sort of proper people do. She was sort of the manners police in our house, and there were a number of years after I wasn't under her view that I didn't continue that habit, until I started to realize that when I was working with others in our hospitals, that one of the most important things that all of us as human beings crave is to know that we're important and to be recognized for our contributions. That's a fundamental human need. And there's a lot of people in healthcare that contribute to the work that we do that may not always be the individuals that we recognize for their work. We talk about the professions that we see on television shows, that we see celebrated, but there are a lot of health professions or professionals that work in healthcare settings that aren't as celebrated. This work is just as important to those that are doing the surgeries or other things that are often highlighted. So I began the process of, on Fridays, sitting down just for 20 or 30 minutes, thinking about different individuals who I had the opportunity to see really contributing to the team in unique ways. And I started writing 5 thank you notes every Friday afternoon and sending those thank you notes to those employees' homes. So it was a very personal note, just a quick note, but it was sent to their homes so they knew just how much I appreciated their extra effort. I have to tell you that what I learned in practicing that form of gratitude is that really ended my week well. Some of my weeks at the end of the week, it's almost hard to remember what I did because things were moving so quickly. And sometimes because my job is to be a professional both a strategist, but also a professional problem solver, it's hard to lift your head up and remember what we accomplished versus what we had to solve for. So I found by sitting down on Friday afternoons and just thinking about the great things that I had seen and the really fantastic people I was working with, and then extending that to a thank you note to their home was really importantly life-giving to me. What I didn't realize, I thought it was, probably a kind thing to do, but I didn't realize the impact it was making on the people receiving those thank you notes until almost a year after I started that habit. I recall one day I was rounding at one of the community hospitals that I lead, and a security officer that I didn't know face to face, I hadn't met him personally before, came up to me and he put his hand over his jacket and he pointed to this little lip of piece of paper coming out of his pocket. He said, "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. I'm so glad to see you, and I want to tell you how much your thank you note meant to me." And I'm thinking really quickly about, okay, which thank you note? Because I not only thank people whose actions I see, but my team in each of my hospitals is always, because they know I like to write thank you notes, sending me little notes. Hey, when you have a chance, recognize this person. They did this today. So I send thank you notes on their behalf as well. So back to my security officer, I was thinking, oh my goodness, who is this? What was the thank you note I just wrote? And so I said, well, I love writing thank you notes, and I'm really glad you appreciated it. Thank you for your service. And he pulled the thank you note out and he told me that he had received my thank you card 1 year ago, and that he put it in his uniform every morning so that no matter what happened at work today, he had a reminder. He said, I could just reach up, Kate, and I can know because you told me that my work is important and that I'm a fundamental part of the team, and whatever I can confront today, I know it's appreciated. That's the power of gratitude. Just one thank you note. The next topic I want to share with you today is a little bit of comment about innovation. There's many things we could talk about here. So let me just highlight maybe 3 stories to illustrate innovation. I looked at my calendar last night, and it's been about 410 days since the first reported case of COVID-19 in Wuhan City, China. Just 410 days. And since that time, we've all learned a tremendous amount about responding to and treating this disease we didn't know before that. We've learned about treatment protocols. We've learned about when to put people on ventilators, when not, and for how long. We've learned about created new medicines to respond to this disease. We've developed new safety protocols, new testing science, and now new vaccines. So a tremendous stories of innovation in science and all of that. What I want to tell you about is things that you may not see on the news, and that are part of science, but a different kind of science, and it's the science of human improvement. When we first started responding to this pandemic, one of the most critical things was, do we have enough personal protective equipment, or PPE? And none of our systems or none of our deliveries, none of the manufacturing companies were designed to be able to deliver the amount of PPE that we knew we were going to have. And so we went into PPE conservation, and we're trying to design new ways of how we were using it until we knew we had enough on board to keep people safe. One of the challenges, one of the early protocols, is that when you had someone who was a COVID-19 patient in your ICU, and an ICU patient clearly has a number of monitors monitoring their body functions, and often has a lot of medications up on bags being delivered to them. So part of what clinicians do is there'll be several times where they're going in and out of the room to check on those monitors and or to hang more bags or more drips. And each time someone goes in and out of that room, the full personal protective equipment has to come off, be thrown away, and new put on, so there's not cross-contamination. So you might imagine just one COVID-19 patient using that kind of protocol can use a tremendous amount of PPE. Early on, we had a nurse come to one of our leaders and say, what if instead of us continuing to go in and out of the room? What if we simply extended the length of tubing that we connect between the patient and the equipment? And we actually move the equipment outside of the room because we've extended the tubing, really tripled the length of tubing. And so we can not have to keep entering the room, but stand out of the room, monitor the equipment, rehang the bags, and go in the room less times, hence decreasing the amount of PPE. That is a small but incredibly important example of innovation and thinking through, this is how we used to do things, but during this time, this is how we're going to do things. Another example that's really more about just humans taking care of humans is during this time, we can't see each other. I don't have one of my face masks with me today, but when you're dressed in full PPE and including a face mask, this is the amount of you that someone can see. And if you're a patient with COVID-19, all you ever get to see of your caregivers today is this much. We also have not allowed visitors in and out of our hospitals. So often there's individuals that are unable to see their families and we don't necessarily know their personal story or able to connect with them. So one of our nursing staff created a get to know you board. And these are simple whiteboards that are now hung on the back doors of each of our hospital rooms that have COVID-19 patients in them. And the first individual who has it, the first clinician who has a chance to interview the patient and get their information also collects the personal information like, do you have a pet? What's your pet's name? Were you a veteran? What's the most important thing to you? Family names, etc. And that's written outside the door with the patient's permission, of course, so that every clinician or individual who enters the room, they see that you were a veteran, they're able, and they're taking out your trash today, they can walk in and say, Ms. Henderson, I see that you're a veteran. I am too. Thank you for your service. It's a pleasure to be caring for you today. It's just another way in which we can connect with people on a human basis and are great examples of innovation. And last but not least, I just want to share a few words with you about feedback and learning. And it's certainly something I've had to learn throughout my career, and that is this: listen to what you don't want to hear. Early in my career, I had to listen to how much energy I have and how sometimes my energy is overwhelming to others. It's a very hard thing for me to hear because I've often been very proud of being a very energetic, optimistic extrovert, but didn't realize how that sometimes when I wasn't toning that back or doing my own energy management, that I was overwhelming others. So listen to what you don't want to hear, because feedback is a gift, and it is through that gift of feedback that we can all learn and grow. Today, often we talk about a growth mindset, and I think it's important to remember that in a growth mindset, challenges, we think about them as being exciting versus threatening. So feedback can present challenges. Let's think about that as being exciting, but not threatening. And so that we can think, wow, here's a chance for me to continue to grow. And if you're able to take that sort of lens with your leadership approach and with your dedication to healthcare, you'll be able to continue to serve, become better yourself, and to be able to serve others more broadly. So I want to do a quick wrap and just say, thanks to all of you for your interest in health and health professions. I'm sincerely excited for each one of you to join me and really thousands of people across the country and across the globe, and very exciting work in continuing to improve healthcare, health access, health communications, health education. We do have a lot of work to do, but we have a lot of really smart people like yourselves interested in our profession. And if we bring our leadership voices and our whole self and really a passion to serve others, I think there's an incredible impact we can make together. Please do take care of yourself. Self-care, if we can't take care of ourselves, it is impossible to take care of others. Please remember that we do none of this alone, and we can go so much further together. Please continue to think about innovation, both in terms of scientifically, what can we do, but also how do we think about innovating in terms of that compassionate part of care, that part of listening and really meeting people where they are. And importantly, never stop listening to feedback or taking those opportunities to learn and grow, because we've got some really important work to do. And the better each one of us can be in leading others and in really meeting people where we are, the more impact we can make. So thank you to each of you. I hope you have a fantastic day, and good luck to each of you on your health and healthcare journey.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kate. We are so grateful to have you. That was an amazing talk. For each and every one of you who are attending today, please head back to the conference website and select your next link. Our next session starts at the top of the hour and is the Healthcare Professionals panel. So you'll get a chance to hear from those working in the field you hope to go into. So we will see you all shortly, and go ahead. Have a great conference day. Thank you.